Good night, folks. My name is Renato. I'm CEO and founder of e-NetSec. And our goal here at e-NetSec is to help small and startup companies, providing them with a robust security solution, and of course, with an affordable price. While we take care of their security, they can focus on develop the products and keep growing. So the reason we aim at these companies is because we believe that every single company deserves to have a decent system where security is at the top. Let's say it's secure, it's free of vulnerabilities, it's maintained well, and it's working well, and it's not so easily exploitable. And as we all know, security is quite a pricey thing, So when you're a startup company, you don't invest a lot of time and money on security because the focus is developing the product, right? So we want to make it affordable for these companies so they can keep developing their product, but also to have a reliable, robust solution, done and maintained by a reputable, good company like e-NetSec. All right. So today, guys, we are gonna talk about DNS Server, and we already installed it with the process of installing Active Directory. I don't know if you remember the roles. I did install the DNS role as well. So we're gonna talk a little bit about how DNS works and what it is and what it does, and then we're gonna show you some of the configuration. It's already pre-installed. We only need a little bit of tidying up to show you where you can find it, how to locate it, and so on. Okay, so let's go. DNS or domain name systems use TCP or UDP port 53. The DNS server listens on port 53, and the clients send queries, or requests using port 53 on UDP, using UDP protocol. Okay. The DNS server makes zone transfers using TCP port 53. So it actually listens on both, right? UDP and TCP port 53, right? DNS is a very important service for the whole internet, for the whole Active Directory. Without DNS, things would just break apart, right? They would fail, because when you type a name on your web browser, for example, a domain, it would not be resolved, right? Therefore, the service would not be mapped and found. Okay, so there are many things. Without DNS, I would say it's a chaos, right? And you would have to remember the interest address, the IP address for every single site you need to connect to, you need to access to. For example, if you wanted to go to the e-NetSec website, instead of typing e-netsec.net, you'd have to type 217.160.0.79, right? So it takes much more effort to remember all these numbers and to associate it in our brain than a simple name, right? So I much rather remember words than numbers, right? So DNS have entries, and these entries help in translating an IP address to a name and vice versa. It helps with mapping services such as email, and for the purpose, it has an entry called MX. These entries are also called records, and DNS have multiple records. A record maps a domain name to an IP address, right? That's the most common record, is the A record. Okay, so you associate a name to an IP, right? That's the most common. And then you have a CNAME, which is a canonical name. Some people call the alias, record. So this is to map a domain to a subdomain. Let's say you have a domain called e-NetSec.net, www.e-NetSec.net, for example, and you want to map it to imap.enetsec.net, right? Or POP3 or SMTP, right? To identify the service. So that's what the record you do use, okay? We mentioned here the MX record, which is mail exchange. This record maps emails to a specific mail server, right? To allows DNS, a mail server to find, the path where to send emails to, right? There is also text or TXT or text record, and this text is used for different things, right? And recently it's been used or adapted to use, what we call security records. Some of them are SPF, and another one is the DKIM keys, and they help with making, the mail system more reliable, because how would you know a mail you received was actually sent from the company it's claiming to be? So the SPF and the KIM and another key is DMARC. They all help with this security, this part of the security mechanism, okay? So there is also another record called SRV or service. These records allow mapping of domains to services such as VoIP and instant message, And there is also a PTR or pointer record, and this record maps an IP address back to a name. So DNS server is divided into zones where all the records pertaining to a domain are created and stored. And this is pretty much it. That's the basic of the basics, right? So how a DNS query works, how you find a name on the internet. This is theme, let's call it, to another video lesson, okay? We are gonna concentrate now just on the basics, how to get the domain working properly on Windows 2019. And we can, once we know how to get these things done, and we are armed with this basic information just passed, then we can start developing our knowledge a little bit further and improve our knowledge in general, right? So let's go. Let's log to our domain controller. So here we are back to our main page. When we start Windows 2019, it brings this dashboard, which is quite useful. It groups all these things together and gives you a nice way of managing your server, right? Because here you have the manage, right? You can manage the local server, add roles and features, add more servers. Here you have the tools for this specific server. You can quickly access a lot of these tools, right? Because before you used to go to the start menu, go to I can't remember the whole path, but you'd have to dig down into the menu to find, for example, Active Directory users and computers. Or you could even go to control panel. Let me show you. Control panel, right? And administrative tools, right? And here you find all the services located in tools, right? Here, administrative tools, right? there it is, Active Directory users and computers, DNS, right? So the same thing you find here, you find there. So that's a quite good, you know, thing to give you a little bit of speed or quickness, you know, in finding your tools. So we're going to talk about DNS, and here it is, right? So here's the tab, which by clicking on it, you're going to the DNS service, right? It is running, as you can see, and if you want to manage it, you have to go to Tools and then click on DNS, and it will bring the DNS Manager app. Okay, look, let's make it bigger. Let's explore. Here are the zones that have been created with, you know, the installation, right? It is running. Here's the main zone for e-NetSec, right? LAN. Here you have some of the records, as I mentioned earlier, you know, the A record, all right, reverse lookups, zones, which is the PTRs. So let's create this zone, right? Primary zone, yes, it's a reverse lookup zone, and here it's 0, right? Finished. And that's how it looks like. If we wanted to create let's create a record here called a record called lab test 01, for example, and give an IP address of 10.0.0.26, for example. We can create the PTR record automatically, or we create it manually. Let's create it manually and go through the process. Okay, so add a host. We did add a host. Click done, and there it is. If we double click on this host, it will show the name, the fully domain qualified name, and the IP address. You can update the PTR, but let's create a PTR. Okay, so lab test 01 with an IP address of 26. So here we right click and then we create a new pointer, right? So 26 is the IP address. We can either type the name or we can browse for it. Okay, let's find it. And there it is. Okay, click OK. And there we have it. Okay. And DNS lookup. So if I do, for example, if I type an IP address 10.6, sorry, that's 6, 0.26, of course I typed double ping, double dot, there you go. It brought me the name of the server. If I type the name of the server, lab test 01, it will bring me the IP address of the server, right? So this tool is called DNS lookup, and it's a tool, you know, that we use to troubleshoot certain aspects of the DNS server, right? You have a help, and it tells you, you know, a lot of the options you can set it to look for, like for example, what is it? The type, right? So you can specify the type, and here, you know, you can say I want to find, let's say I want to find a start of authority, which is SOA. Okay, so if we do a type equals SOA, sorry, set first, set type SOA. If I do e-NetSec sec.net, right, that it brought me all the information about the domain name server, right, for e-NetSec.net. And that it is, right? It gave me the authority, the mail, the host, you know, the serial number for the domain name, for the domains, you know, the refresh, which is 8 hours, the retry, you know, the expire, and the TTL. And, you know, as you can see, it gave me the internet number, and, you know, so that's how you can set, you know, a type of record and this search for that record, you know, let's say MX. If I do now, it's gonna find me all the mail exchange for for the domain e-NetSec, right? And that's pretty much it, right? So here we now have created a record. We created a zone for reverse lookup, and we created a PTR record. Okay, so let's take a look at the whole DNS from top to bottom. At the top we have here the DNS service, right? And you can connect to another DNS server. You can have different views of, you know, refresh, right? When you drill down, you go down, you have the DNS name, I mean the server, right? If you right click on the server name, then you have more options. For example, you can configure the DNS server, right? You can create a partition for directories, you create a new zone, you can set up aging and scavenging, you can update server date files, clean the cache, and so on, right? So one thing that is quite good is this, right? I always set, you know, scavenging stale records, resource records. Why? Because, you know, it's a good option, you know, it's something that, you know, from time to time you need to do, and why not do it automatically? Let's say every 7 days or every 7 hours, depending on your how big or how many changes your DNS, you know, has per day, per hour, right? So that's one thing. If we go down to the zones themselves, for example, you know, if I click or right click on the zone, I have more options. I can update the server data file, I can reload the zone if I made a change and I want it to be available straight away. I can create a record, a CNAME, I can create a mail exchanger, and I can even add a DNS security, right? I can restart, reload the zone, right? And I can click on properties and examine the properties for that specific zone. Let's take a look. There are some interesting things here that we needed to, you know, in the general tab, right? We see that the status is the server is running. We can pause it, right? But we don't want to do that because we want to exchange running. Ideally, if you want to do some maintenance on the server, such as a DNS server, you would have to do it out of hours or schedule a maintenance window with your company and then do it that way. So the zone is integrated with Active Directory, which is a good thing for at least for Windows, right? The replication is done to all the domains, right? Running. Data is stored in Active Directory, and dynamic updates secure only, right? You can have dynamic updates done or none, or secure and non-secure, right? We have gone through this process here, and start of authority. right? This is all the data pertaining to the DNS server itself. You know, normally when you set up a DNS server, you have to add a serial number, and every time you make a change, it increases the serial number, right? So here's the primary server. That's the fully qualified domain name, and the responsible person is normally the host master, but you can create an email record different than that, you know, and specify your name. The refresh intervals is 15 minutes, the retry is 10, and it expires after 1 minute, right? So name servers. Currently, there is only a single name server on our network. You can add name servers here. You know, you can do a query. Let's say you type here an IP address 10.0.0.26, okay, and resolve. It's not going to resolve to anything. Again, I made a mistake here. I typed too many zeros. Resolve. So it's gonna try to validate this IP address, but because it can't resolve it, it's not gonna validate. So let's cancel that. Right. So Wings was a mechanism created, developed by Microsoft, you know, to replace DNS, not to replace, but to mitigate the lack of a DNS server on Windows networks, right? Was Windows naming service, right? And it did the same thing. Was more for a different protocol other than TCP/IP, right? So if you have a Win server on your network, you can enable it here and you can add the IP address. But nowadays, these things are things of the past. Normally, you would have these if you have old clients like Windows 95, 98, ME. I think, yeah, those are the ones more come to mind. Okay, zone transfer. It's always good, right, to take a look at this tab and set this up to help you with a little bit of the security. Okay, so if you have three options: to any server, that's not what you want because that's wide open, because any server requesting a zone transfer would be allowed. So we want this, right? So every time you add a new server, it will be added to this list, and then it will be allowed to have to transfer zones. Okay, and here's where you add it. So notify, the same, right? Here is okay. Let's leave it as it is. Let's apply it. Okay, and security is just, you know, the users and groups who have a, you know, administrative rights to the DNS itself, like read and write, propagate, create records, so on and so forth, right? So this is pretty much it, guys. You know, we have our DNS server up and running. We have created a record as easy as this. Let's create a, anyway, so that's where you created, you know, the records, how you create the records by right clicking on, first you select the zone you want to create, and then you right click on the zone, and then you choose, you know, which record you want to create, right? If you want to refresh the zone, the tasks, reload the zone, if you want to go to the properties, and, you know, and so on and so forth, right? So if you want to create a new zone, all you need to do is right click on, select forward lookup zones, new zone, click next, primary zone, and 12 DNS servers, and then you create the zone here. Let's say e-NetSec.co.uk, for example, right? And that's it, right? And here you have, you know, and the same services and same thing you have to go through. Start with authority, name servers, wings, we don't have a wings, zone transfer, and you know, tie it down. You can create a record, let's say e-NetSec 01. No, let's call it mail, and the IP address would be 10.0.0.26, for example. And let's create because we don't have a DNS, I mean a reverse, let's create. So done. So let's take a look here, and as you can see, it created the PTR automatically, right? So, and that, if you want to export the list to, you know, a CVS file, you can export it here, and there are some options. Invalid argument. Okay. All right. Why? True. That's pretty much it, guys, for the DNS server, right? The DNS, as we can see, is working. Let's say DNS lookup, and if we do, let's say e-NetSec.co.uk, there you go, right? It brings the new zone to us, it shows, right? And that's pretty much it for DNS servers, right? That's it, folks. I think, you know, we gave you as much information as we could, using, you know, trying to make it simple as possible so you can follow it and learn it and try to develop your knowledge. Okay, so hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next, talking about the DHCP server. Talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye.